All right. All right, welcome to the art criticism lecture. I think it's like lecture number 4. So this is on your reading from Feldman's Practical Art Criticism. It's like this little tiny book. And yeah, so this goes with what we're going to be, or what y'all are going to be doing for your art critique, which is like your midterm grade of the class, critique of an artwork. So this is a fairly important lesson that you'll definitely want to refer back to later. So yeah, let's start. All right, what is an art critic? Y'all recognize this guy, the little guy from Ratatouille? What do you think of when you think of an art critic? Do you think of someone like him? When you think of a critic in general, like, do you think of something like him, someone like him, or do you think like he's a food critic? There's movie critics, music critics. You always have like your good versus bad guys. If y'all are into music, people always say that Pitchfork is like a little harsh usually. They're just like all over the place, honestly, with their like criticism, so in like that kind of genre, but like also like Rotten Tomatoes is like movie critics and stuff like that. So yeah. So do you think of someone who is mean and finds everything wrong with an artwork, or do you think of someone that like generally likes things? So yeah. So have you ever been so involved in a movie, TV show, or video game that you felt as if you were part of the action? Have you ever watched a movie so intently that you knew all the lines? I'm that way with Grease. But if you were so deeply involved in like any kind of like movie, video game, TV show, anything like that, like you're involved in a work of art, because that's ultimately what that is. Like all of this stuff, we've talked about this before, they are works of art. So if you've talked about a TV show with your friends that you liked and didn't like, you're critiquing and you're judging and you're making decisions about why it is good or bad. And we do the same thing with visual arts. Critiquing an artwork, I would say, should be different than being like, my 5-year-old could draw that, or something like that. But we'll talk about that later. There are professional critics that judge the merit of music, movies, theater, games, and the visual arts. Oh, I'm forgetting to do this. So in this lecture, you'll learn how to judge visual arts for yourself rather than be told by someone else what is successful and what is not. So, yeah, here, instead of it sucks, you could say it doesn't speak to me, which again reminds me of like the people, I don't know if I said this in my past things, but I'm typically a docent at the Georgia Museum of Art, and I cannot tell y'all how many times I've had like someone tell me that like they just like don't think that something's good because it's abstract and it's just, it is what it is. But we'll talk about it later. So, why art criticism? Why do we need art criticism? Why do we study art criticism? Art criticism allows you to judge an artwork more objectively. This allows you to make judgments based on factual information instead of simply opinion. So again, if we go back to the other slide, whenever the kid was saying that it sucks, that's opinion. That's not like anything factual information. Making judgments based on fact instead of opinion is a much stronger and more thorough way of looking at artworks. And here's like a little graphic about like what should art criticism do. And it's hard to read, but y'all can read it. It's just really cute, and that's why I included it. So, and then there's a quote from the text. So, another stipulation about the visual facts is that they should be given priority over words. Better stated, words about an artwork should be considered valid only to the extent that they can be confirmed in the critic's visual experience. This rule is important for 2 reasons. It saves us from confusing discourse about art with art itself, and it prevents us from claiming another person's experience as our own. So I will say that this part, and the quote goes on, it's on the slide notes, but that part's very important, because this is about whenever you're critiquing an artwork, you aren't trying to critique it and say that you're critiquing it because you have this same point of view as them, or you're within their same experiences. So you have to prevent yourself from trying to claim someone else's experiences as your own whenever you're judging or critiquing artwork, because everybody lives unique lives. So, when do I use art criticism? Art criticism is appropriate to use whenever you're asked to judge an artwork. With few changes, it could also be used to judge music, literature, or drama. So, yeah. This is a very basic outline of, like, how do you critique something, what's coming up. The process prepares you for making other judgments, such as decisions about major purchases, such as cars and homes. The more you practice making an educated, informed judgment, the easier it will be for you to make important decisions. So, there are 4 steps to art criticism, and you can't, like, miss any of these steps. You got to do all of them. So, they are description, analysis, interpretation, and judgment. Yeah, 4 steps. It's not like 4 optional steps. It's 4 steps. So, this is another quote from your reading. A final point about attending to the visual facts should be noted. Many critical disasters are caused by 1, failing to see the artwork completely, and 2, premature closure of the critical process. That means you, in your process, before you're done looking, before you're done describing, and before you're done analyzing, before you're done interpreting, before you're done judging, or you just don't even get to all the steps. That's what I'm saying. The steps are important. Premature closure, in turn, leads to what I call an abortion of the aesthetic experience. It is usually caused by the critic's impatience, prejudice, or unwillingness to suspend judgment. That is, the critic knows in advance that the work is bad or good, and hence will not give it the benefit of a thorough examination. This is a common sin in art criticism, or just criticism in general. So, this is like whenever you see something and then you just immediately decide that you don't like it. And, yeah, that's just like, yeah, that's what it, like you said, it's a sin in art criticism. There's another, it goes on to say more, but y'all can read that later. So, yeah, basically suspend your judgment. Don't decide early on whether or not this work is good or bad. And yeah, we'll talk about it. Alright, so step 1 is description. So description is what can be seen in the artwork. So for this, you want to make a list of visual qualities of the work that are obvious and immediately perceived. Of course, only the information you know should be written down, but educated guess is okay in the case of subject matter or media. Be objective, just answer what you see, no judgment, no analysis, only what you see. This should include title, subject matter, artist, media, general context. Oh. There. Sorry, guys. Now, a note on titles. So, I would say that, like, sometimes, like, not everybody remembers all the titles for all the works, but, I mean, if you're critiquing a work of art, especially work of contemporary art, a title, it can be very important, and, a title can do a lot of things, and there's a quote under here that I'll read. Now, titles are important in criticism. Whole books could be written about them. For the purpose of practical criticism, let us say this. Some titles are obvious, some are vague, and some are mysterious. Some are purely literary exercises. Some offer hints about subject matter. Some describe technical objectives. Some are unintentionally misleading, and some are calculated to throw us off the scent. Our rule is as follows. When a title seems to make sense, use it to form a hypothesis about the meaning of the work. But if the title conflicts with the visual facts, do not use it. So that's kind of how that goes. So it's like, depends on if the title makes sense with the work, because sometimes titles can be like completely unrelated. In our upcoming example, it's not unrelated, so yeah, we'll just talk about that in a minute. So yes, remember to be objective. Feldman says, naming what an observer sees is part of the overall process of description. With realistic works of art, the task is easy enough. Adults can do it with almost as well as children. What we aim for is a list of inventory of the principal things that are there, and what we want that inventory to be non-controversial, so we do not characterize the things we see, persons, places, or objects. We just name them. That seems to make children very happy. Adults, however, want to tell us what they think or how they feel about what they see. This must be discouraged. At the naming stage of the criticism, we should employ neutral, unloaded, value-free language. Alright, so that means this is like I said, being objective. This is naming exactly what you see. Like, imagine that you're teaching words to your younger sibling, if you have one, or somebody in your family that's learning words. And you're like pointing at things in pictures, and you're like, look at this. This is a book. And you're like, book. So yes, it's like that. Being objective. We're going to be like, this is a picture. This is, you know. There's some quotes under there if y'all want them. Read it. So here's some more questions for description, kind of get us thinking. So, what is the name of artist who created the work? What kind of artist is it? So these aren't all the names, but these are like a good, like, some. What is the name of what kind of artwork is it? What is the name of the artwork? When was the artwork created? Name some other major events in history that occurred at the same time the artwork was created. List all the literal objects in there. What do you notice first? What kind of colors do you see and why? What shapes do we see? Are there lines in the works? If so, what kind of lines? Textures? What time of day, night? How can we tell? What is the overall visual effect, mood of the work? Alright, so now we're going to start. So we're going to do a little art criticism ourselves, or I guess I will, and then y'all are going to maybe understand it this way. Alright, so we're going to critique this artwork. So, this is a painting by Peter Uka. He is Nigerian, and he's a painter. So, let's start describing. I have the questions for description here. I'm not that good at memorizing. So we already know the facts that if we were going to name the artwork, well, if we're going to name the artwork, we already know this Peter Uka Quiet Listening 2020. That was whenever it was made. It's also an oil painting. I think that was on the last slide. So we know that these are all ready. So this is kind of like, what is the name of the artist who created it? Peter Uka. What kind of artwork is it? It's a painting. It's an oil painting. What is the name of the artwork? Quiet Listening. When was artwork created? 2020. Name some other major, bless you, bro. We can name 100 million other events that's happened this year, but that's... so now we're going to list some literal objects in the work. So, yeah, just do as it says. So we have literal objects in the works. We have the record player, a table with a glass on it, and a book, and a man in a blue suit, and some records with some books, a window, floor, carpet. That looks like a desk, or no, it's not a desk. It's like a media player, maybe, or like, you know, a chair, green chair. So if we want to talk about the literal shapes, okay, yeah, there. So what do we notice first in the work? I mean, I notice the man, obviously, because he is the focal point of this, so that's what you notice first, and he's in a blue suit. What kind of colors do you see? So there's blue tones, grays, more like this is brownish, and then there's green. They're all like very like calming colors. So what shapes can we see? So we have some squares on the floor, and then this shape under this table. So there's all sorts of shapes here, shapes here. You see how he has asymmetrical balance, but this person's in the middle, like the leg is in the middle, and then I don't know if y'all can actually see this thing on this screen, but you know, he's got asymmetrical balance here, so we can see that, like if we're talking about the lines, we see a bunch of straight lines, so there's a lot of straight lines. Yeah, shapes, what kind of edges? So sharp edges. Are there lines anywhere? What kind of lines? Yeah, a lot of straight lines. There are some curved lines, but you know. What sort of textures do you see and how would you describe them? So, textures, let's talk about it. So we have wood over here. This looks like it's made out of wood. This is likely metal. This guy's suit, honestly, this guy's suit is fancy. Like, I don't know what it'd be made. It could even be velvet. Like, it looks so nice of a texture. And then the wood of the chair, that's green, and then the carpet. Is that carpet or is that? I don't think that's actually carpet. I think that's just shadow, and I can't actually see very well. I'm gonna be honest, guys. So yeah, textures. What time of day or night? So we see that it is still light outside, so we can maybe say it's like the afternoon. We don't necessarily know, but that's what we can tell. And what are all the visual effects or the mood of the work? I think it's calming. I don't know about y'all. It does have, the title is Quiet Listening, and we can maybe make some suggestions off of that, but we'll get there. All right, step 2 is analysis. So what relationships exist with what is seen? So we want to mentally separate the parts or elements, thinking in terms of texture, shapes, forms, light textures, shapes, forms, light, dark, bright, dull colors, types of lines, sensory qualities. In this step, consider the most significant art principles used in the element of the work. So analysis, we're looking at the principles of art. Focus on the formal aspects of art, including elements and principles and compositional strategies. This should include, well, I guess that's where I should have said the other part. This should include elements and principles, compositions, blah, blah, blah. I did that too many times on there. Sorry, guys. All right, let's talk about the language of analysis. So, we already talked about line, but whenever we're talking about analysis and how we're going to analyze things, we need to have we can't just say that is a line. We need more descriptors. So, line, straight, curve, thick, thin, horizontal, vertical, open, close, sharp, dull, hard, soft, flowing. So y'all can read that. There's light, there's day and night light, artificial light, clear and shadowy, focused and hazy, glaring and dim. There's all sorts. So shape is round or angular, cubic, triangular, flat, measured, irregular, convex, concave, geometric, organic. So we have color and temperature, hot and cold, warm or cool, complementary, analogous, high, low, key, pure mix, blah, blah, blah. Size and quantity, great, small, many, few, tall, short, wide, narrow, blah, blah, blah. Space and location, left and right, empty, full, close, distant. And then surface, texture, smooth, rough, hard, wrinkled, even, blah, blah, blah. Y'all can read. Just read them. So after these descriptors have been used, we can make further observations about similarity, closeness, contrast, sequence, direction, rhythm, symmetry, balance, completeness, and closure. These terms, drawn mainly from Gestalt psychology, deal with perceived relationships among forms. They are more abstract than words like straight and curved, but we need them to do formal analysis. Without this terminology, our critical language would be greatly impoverished. So that's a quote. It's on page 29. Alright, so here's some questions for analysis. How does the artist use the colors in the works? What sort of effect do the colors have on the works? What is the artist using use shapes within the works? How have lines been used in the works? How's blah blah blah? Yeah. We'll answer them over here. Alright, so let's answer these analysis questions. Alright, so how has this artist used color in the work? So we kind of talked about that already. We see that there are, is that more red? No, it looks brown in here. So we have like more diluted colors, especially with like the kind of like, I need to figure out what color that is. It's like a bluish gray, but we're moving. So I'm repainting a new house soon. Because we bought a house, but that's besides the point. But I like that color. Sorry, I have ADHD. Okay, what sort of effect do the colors have on artwork? I already said this. It's like calming. And then that blue is like, well, blue is already a calming color because it's like a cool color. And then that one tone of blue like really makes it stand out off the other blues. Okay, how have lines been used in the work? So has the artist used them as an important or dominant part of the work, and do they play a different role? I don't know about y'all, but I think that lines play a fairly big role in this artwork. I mean, they kind of direct your eye all over the painting. We have the lines here, we have the lines here, 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 here. Like, this work is like literally made of lines. If you were going to critique this, or your artist critique, and you didn't mention all of these lines, you're missing something. So, putting that out there. What role does texture play in the works? Has the artist used the illusion of texture? Has the artist used actual texture? Has texture been used within the works? So it's more of the illusion of texture, I would say, but it's a very like light texture. It's almost like washed over, but the texture is more apparent on the person's body. Y'all can probably see it better on your computer. And then how has the artist used light in the work? Is there illusion of a scene with lights and shadows, or does the artist use light and dark values in a more abstract way? I'd say that he actually uses it fairly abstractly because, I mean, you can tell that well, maybe not. No, he does it. So it must be pretty early in the daytime. Because now I'm noticing, and see, this is why you don't want to do premature, like, steps, whatever Feldman said. So the sun's like here, so there's shadow from the chair, and then there's shadow, where I thought it was a rug, because I don't see very well. And then how was the overall visual effect or mood of the artwork been achieved by the use of elements of art and principles of the design? I'd say yes. Like, the lines are very well balanced. There is good balance and symmetry, asymmetrical balance, or whatever. Focal point, all that shapes, all the shapes, the repeating of shapes, create unity, colors that are like complementary like this creates unity, but there's also variety because things are not like, you know, he's not like in the center and just by himself. Okay, but there you go. Alright, next. So step 3 is interpretation. What is your evaluation of the work based on steps 1, 2, and 3? An interpretation seeks to explain the meaning of the work based on what you have learned so far about the artwork. What do you think the artist was trying to say? Propose ideas for possible meanings based on evidence. This should include critical hypothesis, at least one, but it could be multiple. And the critical hypothesis are proposed meanings for the art piece, and a critical and confirmable interpretation. Support of that proposed meaning through observed details in the work. Alright, and here's a quote from Feldman. So, interpretation is a crucial third stage of art criticism. This is the point at which our search for meaning reaches a climax. And while interpretation is difficult, it is also rewarding. Our patient critical inquiry finally receives its payoff. What is interpretation? It is a statement, spoken or written, which makes our descriptive and analytic observations hang together or cohere. A good interpretation has the effect of making sense out of the separate, disjointed, and partial meanings we discovered in the course of our critical exploration. When an interpretation is completed, when it clicks, we think we know what a work of art means. That knowledge, accompanied by agreeable sense of certainty, may be a psychological illusion, but we like it and we believe we've earned it. Alright, so there's a lot of questions for interpretation because, I mean, depending on artwork, every artwork can be interpreted differently, obviously. So here are some general questions for interpretation, and then I'll get into like some other ones. So, what was the artist's statement of the work? What do you think it means? What does it mean to you? How does this relate to you in your life? What feelings do you have when looking at this artwork? Do you think there are things in the artwork that represent other things or symbols? Why do you think that the artist chose to work in this manner and made these kind of artistic decisions? Why did the artist create this artwork? Alright, so we also have Feldman's questions for critical interpretation, and these are in your reading, and I would highly suggest you read them because, well, I mean, first of all, read the whole thing because you need to for your paper. But because this is helpful for a paper also. So here are some of his other questions. So I'll go to the picture. Well, y'all just look it up. So he kind of separates it into like where in the world is this person in the painting, where do they live, what do they do, section, and then he has a device for formulating a critical hypothesis. Like, what is the work trying to tell me? What is it trying to sell you? What does it want you to admire? Whom does it tell me to emulate? What does it ask me to do? What does it want me to think? How does it want me to feel? How does it want me to act? And then, who does the work think I am? Was this work made for a special person? Was I supposed to see it? Does this work address me by my age or gender? Does it address me by my race or nationality? Does it address me by my religion or politics? Does it assume I'm rich or poor? Does it think I'm ignorant or educated, naive or sophisticated? Am I supposed to grieve or rejoice? Was this created for winners or for losers? The final set of questions deals with what might be called inside baseball. This is from him. Is this work about the artist's life? Does the work talk about other artists? So whenever it says talk about other artists, it means like, is it about like other references to other artists in the history or other, talk about art history. Do I recognize the art game being played? So that's like the banana on the wall. That's an art game, like the Comedian by that guy. Is the work about an old art style, about the birth of a new style, about the death of all styles? Is someone being denounced? Is the work competing with something we do not see? Is this a demonstration of skill or technique or process? Is it about the making of art? Does the subject really matter? Does the subject matter really matter? So these are all questions. They're on the slide, but they're also in your reading. So what is a good interpretation? So a good interpretation has completeness. So most of the facts have been explained. Important features of the artwork have not been left out. It has persuasiveness. The critic's argument is logical and feels convincing. It makes us want to say yes. The critic appeals to my experience rather than inside knowledge or outside authorities. Personal relevance. So durability. The critic's interpretation makes sense over time and many viewings. So yeah, that one's a big one because some artworks, like they make sense within the time that they are in, but perhaps, I mean, if we were wanting to call Confederate monuments artworks, you know, I don't think they made sense at the time that they were being put up. A lot of them got put up in the Civil Rights era to scare black people, and like, but that's whatever. So durability would be does it make sense over time? So after many viewings. So like, did the meaning of the artwork change and their interpretation change after time? And emotional power. The critic's interpretation communicates the viewer's deepest levels of feelings and awareness. Intellectual force. The critic's interpretation makes valid connections between the work of art and the world of ideas. Insight. The critic's interpretation explains why the work is or is not enjoyable to the viewer. Like I said in a previous lecture, I don't care if you don't like the work, but you better be able to tell me why. So the critic's interpretation explains why the work is or is not enjoyable to the viewer. So tell me why. You better be able to explain it. Visual responsiveness. The image of the work is felt or remembered through the critic's explanation. And then originality. The critic's interpretation discovers fresh meaning in the work as it relates to the world we know and the life we have led. Alright, so now we're back to the general questions for interpretation. So, we're going to interpret this work more. So what was the artist's statement in this work? And I'm going to pull up these other ones. So is it significant? It's called quiet listening. Do you think that he just wanted to make a statement about listening to records, like people should listen to records? What about the style of clothing that this person is wearing? The suit does look modern because it's like slim, but you can't tell fully, but the collars are very pointy. But knowing that he lives in Nigeria, perhaps this is a memory. Perhaps this is like of his childhood from like a time whenever people wore that. Perhaps the style is different there. I mean, I have friends that wear those like collars, so maybe this is just like a different style of collar. But we do have records, so then that has to make us wonder, like, what year is it? I mean, I have records, but is this a memory of a time whenever these were current? When people listened to records and, like, gramophone, whatever that kind of record player is? That's an old time. So we have to think about that. So I'm not going to, by the way, I'm not going to straight up give y'all the interpretation because I also feel like this is up to everybody. I'm just posing questions. So what do you think this work means? What does it mean to you? It could mean something different to everybody else. Perhaps you grew up in a family and you all sat around and listened to records. Perhaps you have stories about your grandparents, like sitting around and listening to records, and that's how it relates to you. Or you really enjoy just listening quietly and sitting. What feelings do you have while looking at the work? You think there are things in the work that represent symbols? I'm going to pull up some of the other questions. So yeah, like, where in the world or out of the world is this happening? All right. Sorry about that. My cat was being weird, so I had to deal with him. So yeah, back to interpretation. So yeah, where are we in this work? Are we at this guy's house? Or are we at someone else's house? I'd say that we're probably at his house or a house. Where else would you probably be listening quietly, it seems, by yourself to records? So some of the other questions is, what is this work trying to tell me? What is it trying to tell me to emulate? What does it want me to do? What does it want me to think? What does it want me to feel? What is it asking me to do? Well, if we're gonna be really obvious about it, this is called quiet listening. Maybe this just wants you to listen quietly. Quiet listening is all about, like, being observant. It's what we're doing right now, technically, or I'm doing, I guess. But yeah. Other questions. So who does the work think that I am? Do you feel like a voyeur? Do you feel like you are sitting here with this person in this work? Like, would there be a chair here and this is where this viewer would be? Was this work made for someone in particular? Does it address someone by their age or gender? I don't say that it addresses me by my age or gender or race or culture, obviously, but for other people it might. It definitely would or could. Does this assume that I'm rich or poor? I wouldn't say that it assumes either. This is very, very good about technical skill. This is not solely about technical skill. Is this work about the artist's life? What do you think? Is it about someone else's life? Someone close to him? Why did this artist create these works? Create this work? Like, why did he choose that manner? Now we're going to judgment, because I accidentally pressed the button, so let's do it. Alright, judgment is step 4, your last step. After, what is content or meaning based on step 1 and 2? So after, I should say 1, 2, and 3. Whatever. After careful observation, analysis, interpretation of an artwork, you are ready to make your own judgment. This is your personal evaluation based on the understanding of the artwork. Interpretation directs us towards the grounds of judgment, which seems appropriate for the work we have examined. So the grounds of judgment are how we are going to be judging this work, like from what grounds. Discuss the overall strengths, successes, and merits of the work. Artwork is declared successful or unsuccessful, not good or bad. I will repeat, artwork is declared successful or unsuccessful, not good or bad. So it also gets, you should also give a strong evidence that has been observed in the work and to back up all claims. So yeah, you need to back up whatever you're making your claims about. So, and then interpretation directs us towards the grounds of judgment, which you, I wrote that twice. Sorry, guys. So the grounds of judgment are the type of argument a critic uses to justify his or her opinion of the goodness or badness of a work of art, which is like the successful or unsuccessfulness. So there are three types, formalism, expressivism, and instrumentalism. So formalism. So formalism, according to formalism, an artwork is either good to the extent that its parts cooperate, reinforce each other, and join to form a perfect unity. Three aspects make a formal unity perfect. It is complex but not confusing. It is balanced but not boring. It is finished but not overdone. A formalist unity, moreover, is not tainted or compromised by associations with practical life, personal needs, or social concerns. It denies aesthetic validity of religious, political, and utilitarian art. So, expressivism. According to this standard of value, an artwork should be judged by its capacity to communicate feelings of ideas in honesty, vividly and forcefully. Okay, so I'll just go back to formalism for a second. Okay, so formalism is just like, you're just basing it off the basic aesthetic elements and principles, pretty much. Like, that's what that is. Expressivism is like your thoughts and feelings. So, according to this standard of value, an artwork should be judged. Yes, an expressive critic is not especially concerned with pure form or abstract visual relationships. He or she cares instead about the validity and persuasiveness of message conveyed through visual form. Notice that expressive critics regard form as a means to an end, and the end is truth rather than beauty. To be sure, beauty is a good thing provided, but does not overlook the facts. So in short, expressivists refuse to separate intellectual and moral values from aesthetic values. So yeah, these are like thinking, feeling, kind of like, I love this work because it makes me feel this, and like formalist people don't like political artwork and stuff like that, but expressive people do. So I'm probably more expressive. Or you can't like judge it with, you can't use formalism to judge political artwork, I guess is more apt to say. Instrumentalism. Instrumentalism is the grounds of judgment that locates the goodness of artwork and the capacity to serve an institution that is more important than art. Instrumentalists tend to ask these questions. How effectively does this work promote religious doctrine, advance a political agenda, satisfy a political need, or successfully sell a product? Instrumentalists are very pragmatic. They will not judge an artwork apart from its ideological, political, or economic effects. Alright, so that's like going to, the Sistine Chapel, and you are only judging it based off of the effect that it has on, as a visual imagery of the Bible. So we have some questions for judgment. So, why do you think that this work has intrinsic value or worth? What is the value you find in the works? So, if it's beautiful, that's could be a value. If it conveys an important social message, affects the way I see the world, makes insightful connections, reaffirms religious belief. Do you think that the work has a benefit for others? Do you find that the work communicates an idea, feeling, or principle that would have value for others? What kind of effect do you think the work could have for others? Does the work lack value or worth? Why do you think this is so? Could the reason you find the work lacking come from poor use of the elements of art? Could the subject matter be unappealing, unimaginative, or repulsive? Rather than seeing the work of art as very effective or without total value, does the work fall somewhere in between? Do you think that the work is just okay? What do you think? What do you base this opinion on? The use of the elements of art, the lack of personal expression, the work lacks major focus. Explore your criticism of the work. As such, you would give any positive perceptions. Realize that your own taste and prejudice may enter into your criticism. Give your positive and negative perceptions. So again, like I said before, it doesn't have to be all positive. You can have like parts that you like and parts that you don't like. Maybe you aren't sure how you feel about a work. Sometimes that's how it is. That's how, you look at something and you're like, I don't know how this, because you don't recognize the emotions that it's making you have. Like maybe it makes you uncomfortable. So you're like, this is a bit weird. I don't know that I like this. So yeah. So let's judge this work. So why do you think this work has intrinsic value? So is this work valuable? I mean, it's sold. I don't know how much it's sold for because galleries don't generally post how much they sell their artworks for. The art world is not transparent. And the cost of art is very arbitrary, in my opinion. So not that it's not worth it. It's just like once you get to like the auction houses and the galleries, it's like there's no like standard. But that's beside the point. What is the value that you find in this work? So I think that this work is beautiful. Does it convey an important social message? Maybe not. Could the social message just be that he wants representation, more representation of people that look like him in museums, in artwork? Does that mean it has a benefit for others? Like if he is increasing representation, is that a way to benefit like other people in his community, other people that look like him? Do you find that the work communicates an idea or feeling or principle that would have value for others? Quiet listening, I mean that might have value for others. Does the work lack value or worth? Why do you think so? Well, I don't think that it necessarily lacks value or worth. I mean, the print, he is actually very technically on point. I would say that if we were going to give this a type of, we're going to approach this from a stance of judgment, I honestly say that this would be one of the works that you would actually want to approach from a more, perhaps even formalist standpoint, because the execution is so on point in this work, and like the tone of the colors and the shapes and the lines and the balance, and it's an interesting work. It's visually appealing. So yeah. So explore your criticism. That's my judgment. So I would say that if I was going to judge this work, I'm not going to give a full judgment. I think that, this could very well be perhaps a memory, like I said before, of maybe someone, or, it could be like more of a current time and like, just trying to have more representation of Black people in art and in museums, kind of painting. I mean, especially if you think about, like, if he's trying to show, so we have to think about where he's at. So he's in Nigeria, And what do we usually think of when we think about people in Africa? We probably think about people, perhaps he wanted to show this blue suit because he wanted to show something different than the traditional dresses of Africa, or because he wanted to show that people in Africa aren't that much different than us. They don't live on floors that are dirt. Like, they wear suits. Or there's a common misconception that, like, that's pretty much, like, existed since, like, colonial times, that a lot of Africa is still living in this, like, very tribal, savage way, but there are bustling and, like, economic booms happening in Africa, and these people are living lives that could be in some ways very congruent to where we're at now. So what is our judgment when we think about people that live in Africa? Maybe that's what he's trying to say. Maybe he's saying that, trying to give you a picture of what is modern life. So maybe he's telling you that you need to sit down and listen. Think about the fact that it's called quiet listening. So quiet listening. There is a man listening, but who should be the one doing the listening right now, in 2020? So, I will leave this here for now, and I'm going to do some more like little critiques, like little short critiques of different genres of artwork. I did choose, I would say I chose painting today because we're like, this is our painting unit. And like I'll put up little short videos, so because I know that if I only give y'all an example of painting, some of y'all might be confused whenever you get to your critique, but we'll get there. And let me know if y'all have questions, and